On today's Movie Talk, we have the first reaction to Avengers Infinity War. We've also got a brand new trailer for Terminal, Margot Robbie's new movie, and Steven Spielberg has some serious thoughts about streaming movies. It's all coming your way today on Collider Movie Talk. This is one heck of a lineup of stories, and yet again, I am so lucky to be sharing this table with a great group of ladies. We, of course, have someone who is not hosting this show, but will be hosting next Friday's show. It's Sinead DeVries.
Hey, guys.
Then we have two Movie Talk debuts. I can't believe it. Collider.com's Haleigh Foutch, who you've seen on some reviews lately, and of course, Schmodown's The Crusher, Rachel Cushing. I am so happy to be here today with you guys, and we're just going to jump right into it because we have a pretty big story to start us off. So we've got our very first reaction to Avengers Infinity War, and it comes from none other than Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn. He took to Twitter to share his thoughts on a screening, saying, "Avengers Infinity War is incredible. Wow." And that's all I'll say for the time being. He also followed that one up with, "I honestly can't get Avengers Infinity War out of my head." Then on top of that, in related Infinity War news, a New York Times article has an interview from Cap himself, Chris Evans, and in it, he says he has no plans to return to the franchise. You want to get off the train before they push you off, he said, and expects that planned reshoots in the fall will mark the end of his tenure in the familiar red, white, and blue supersuit. All right. So to start here, Rachel, I'm going to toss it to you. First off, with these James Gunn tweets, what do you make of it? Because in my mind, yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself and assume Avengers is going to blow my mind, but he's part of the MCU. Why would he tweet anything at all if he didn't mean it?
Yeah, I mean, well, this is it. Like, we're starting now. Like, the screenings are going to happen, the premiere is going to happen. We're going to start, all of these reactions are going to roll out, and it's just going to build the hype even bigger than it already is, which is crazy. It's the second tweet that caught my attention, to be honest, because for me, a sign of a great movie, of a movie that isn't just fun and enjoyable in the moment, but is like something that will stick with you. And the fact that he said he was still thinking about it the next day, that's a sign to me that it's not just a movie that nails the spectacle, but that it nails, hopefully, the emotion and the themes and all the things that we really want from it in terms of the characters, most likely the deaths, and also what we're all been talking about, Thanos hopefully being the villain, the three-dimensional villain we all want him to be. So for James Gunn to be saying that he thought it was awesome and wow, and then the next day to say he's still thinking about it, I think is a sign that it nails those areas as well. Hopefully.
It's a great point. I mean, I do want to go on a wild ride with Avengers, but I also want something, especially with Thanos being the big bad and us being meant to feel like, oh, he could really take down these characters we know and love. You would think you would want to walk out of it saying, oh, I can't get that out of my head. And hopefully for real dark, threatening reasons that we can feel. Sinead, what do you make of these first two tweets? Are you buying it right now, or are you not quite sold on the quality of the movie yet?
I mean, I heard some people say, like, well, what do you expect him to say? Like, of course he's going to support the MCU. But I also feel like if it was a horrible movie, which I would never, ever believe in a million years, it would be horrible. It might not live up to people's expectations, but it's not going to be a bad movie. But even if he didn't feel like it lived up to his expectations, I don't think he would have said anything at all. I really don't. Like, I think that he's respectable enough to know not to just say things just to get a cheap reaction. Mm-hmm. So I do trust what he's saying. I do believe it, and honestly, it made me more excited. Like, believe it or not, there is room to get more excited about this movie, and it did. It made me more excited. I was like, oh man, and I'm right there with you. The fact that he was still thinking about it is the difference between a great movie and like a movie that I know I can take my friends and my family members that are not necessarily into Marvel movies too, and they are still going to enjoy it, because if it's a good movie, regardless of the genre, it's a good movie.
Yeah, one tweet is one thing, but to go out of your way to do a second tweet is a little different. And also, knowing how James Gunn acts, how he acts on social media of all places, he's not the kind of guy who goes on Facebook and does those Q&As and kind of jerks his fans around and just says whatever the most PC, whatever the most industry-friendly thing is to say. He's honest. So does that make you believe exactly what he says about Infinity War, Haleigh?
Yeah, I think you really hit it right there. He is very honest with his fans. He keeps things level. He's very good at walking the line of Marvel's secrecy and giving the people something to chew on, to talk about. And he's never lied, unless that one Easter egg thing doesn't really exist. I'm sure it does, but can we please find that? No, I believe him. I think it's like you said, why say anything at all if it doesn't meet your expectations? It's that second tweet. That's if he can't stop thinking about the movie, that second tweet is the one I can't stop thinking about.
All right, I'm going to toss it right back to you with this whole believability thing, because the second half of this Avengers story we're covering right now is Chris Evans' comments in this New York Times article about whether or not he's going to stick with the MCU after Avengers 4. And it's not like this is new news. He's been talking about this for a while, ever since we were aware of when certain contracts were up. Those conversations were going to happen no matter what. So, given what you saw in that New York Times article, do you believe that he's really leaving now more than ever?
Yes, with some caveats. Like, his wording is pretty specific to leave it open. Like, he could do cameos if he wanted to come back. He didn't say, I'm hanging up the suit forever, you know? But it's sort of heartbreaking, but it's not at all surprising. He's always been the one that seemed most committed to doing his contract, and then that's about it. That said, we've seen that they're willing to pay the big bucks after someone's contract is up to keep them around if they want them for more stories. And I think that Cap has, as much as Iron Man is seen as sort of like the godfather leader of this group, Cap has also been there the whole time, really sort of the heart of the Avengers unit. And he's certainly my favorite Avenger, so I am a little devastated knowing this is almost certainly going to happen. I mean, the safe money was always on him being the one to go out in these films.
I'm Team Cap as well. So while I don't want to see him go, I brought this up in the news video we did the other day. The only silver lining to an MCU without Chris Evans as Captain America in it, to me, is that taking him out of the equation basically forces them to propel the MCU forward in new, fresh ways. And whether it's someone else just taking up a leadership role in the group or someone assuming the Captain America identity, I think that's something that could be a major game changer for this franchise. How are you feeling about this one, Rachel?
I think that's the point. You know, I adore Chris Evans and his Steve Rogers. He did something with that character nobody believed was possible. He's basically a goody two-shoes, and yet we all cared about him and have, you know, gone on this entire journey with him. And if he's not part of it anymore, there might be this sort of feeling of like, well, who fills that role? But that's also an exciting question to ask. And the possible avenues that they can go down opens up a lot of new ideas, new storytelling things. And I don't know, like there's an excitement to the idea of, well, then where do we go from here? Plus, on Chris Evans' side, that article was about the fact that he's about to do a show on Broadway. You know, he directed a movie in 2015. He said he wanted to direct more. You know, he's an artist. He wants to try other things. And I kind of, as somebody who admires him and the risks that he's taken and the things that he's done, I'm like, you know, go forth, do other things. And I think that that's important for actors to do if they feel that that's important for themselves. And he seems sincere in that, to want to push himself outside of that.
Someone on Twitter actually pointed out to me, and I wish I could remember this person's name, because it's a very interesting fact to consider right now, and it's that Chris Evans has been credited for an MCU movie every single calendar year since First Avenger. And, you know, some of them were the instance with Loki, so it's not really full-blown leading roles, but he does. If you look on IMDb, he's got one for every single year since First Avenger came out. So, Sinead, if I gave you the choice right now, if you could choose whether or not this statement is true, Chris Evans stays or he goes, what would you choose?
I would have him stay. Like, I'm going to be real honest and be like, I don't like change. I get it. Like, it's super exciting for somebody else to assume the role. It's super exciting to see what else we could do with it. It leaves room for a brand new character. Great. All wonderful, fine. I don't want him to go. And that's if I'm just being 100% honest. Like, I've always believed that if they were going to kill off one of the core members of the Avengers, it was going to be him. And I've said that from the beginning. Just because I don't want him to stay doesn't mean I'm not naive to the fact that it's a possibility. I'm not like, it's not going to happen. I do believe that it is a huge possibility that he could go. But I do think that we always talk about these things when it comes to like a new movie, and now that it's been getting closer to Avengers, we've always known that's where his contract was. So of course these conversations are going to be happening. I don't think that means anything specifically. I just feel like the conversation had always been about Chris Evans' contract more so than the other people's contracts. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because we love Chris Evans so much, or because he's been so heavily involved in the MCU. But I do think that we sometimes forget that like all actors have contracts, and all actors' contracts comes to an end. One of my Lyft drivers the other day was like, literally, he's like, so who do you think they're gonna kill in the MCU? And I was like, all right, let me think. So he also was like, everybody seems to think it's Captain America. And I mean, he's right. And I do too. If they were gonna kill off one of the core members, it would be him. Do I want that to happen just yet? No, I don't think I'm ready for it just yet. But then again, I could go into a movie and they could give him the most dignified, respectful death ever, and I would leave bawling my eyes out. Like, trust me, I would be hysterically crying. But if it was so good and so it wrapped up everything so nicely and put a giant bow in his whole story, then yes, I would respect the hell out of it, you know? But yeah, if your one and only question is my choice right now, then no. That might change after I see the movie, but no.
Not my one and only question, because now obviously it's an if or the one or the other, so we have to bet on it. So taking out of the equation what you want, what do you think will happen? If you have to put some money on it right now, is he going to return or is he not after Avengers 4?
Based on right now, I would say I'm leaning towards no, and it kills me, but I am leaning towards no.
It's funny how you wanted one and I said I wanted the other, but I'm going to lean towards a yes, because if I've learned anything covering movies and especially franchises in this industry, it is never say never, whether it's someone coming back in flashback mode or
I mean, I could see that. I don't think we're going to get a major contract renewal type deal. That's what I mean. But yeah,
maybe not a contract renewal. Where my mind is going is something along the lines of Homecoming. Like someone needs Cap, Chris Evans' Cap as a mentor, so he'll be back in that capacity maybe. Haleigh, what are you going with on this?
I'm a little bit in between. I think Cap is probably done as a lead character, but I do definitely see an opportunity for cameos or small returns. I also think that Chris Evans has been pretty straight up this whole run, that he was a little nervous about the contract to begin with. He's compared it to a marriage. It's 10 years of your life. I get the sense he might be ready to explore other options.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a no return, a return in a full role, middle of the road cameo type thing. Where are you going with this?
The only way he comes back is if like everything else in his life crashes and burns. Like
Right.
I completely agree with Haleigh. Like I think that he has been very upfront with what he wants in his career, and he always wants to push himself and try new things and do different things, and the the contractual things that came with it, and I feel like he's ready to literally hang up the cape and move on with his life as an actor, as a person, do all the things that he wants to do. I mean, he's still in his mid-30s, but I mean, if the next 5 movies he's in tank and the mortgage on the house is due and everything else, okay, maybe. But I think personally for him, it's time.
All right, fair. And speaking of switching gears in your career a little, we have a new trailer for the movie Under the Silver Lake. It's an A24 release. It's a neo-noir thriller, and it comes from the director of It Follows, David Robert Mitchell. This new one stars Andrew Garfield as a disenchanted man who discovers a mysterious woman played by Riley Keough, only for her to completely vanish from his life. So the man embarks on a quest to find her, following clues that lead him into the wild conspiracies of Los Angeles. Under the Silver Lake opens in theaters June 22nd. So when I first watched this trailer, not that I was expecting exactly It Follows, but I was expecting something with a very similar tone or feel, or maybe a little bit of a horror quality to it. That does not seem to be this whatsoever. So Haleigh, as a fan of It Follows, were you as surprised as I was?
I wasn't super surprised, to be honest. I think it translated that he wanted to do something different, and I think it's a smart move. You can see instantly that he still has that style. He's bringing heavy style to the equation, but I love that he's exploring a different tone here. When I watched the trailer, I was getting like hints of Brick, a little bit of Inherent Vice, and I love that. It's weird. I love neo-noirs, and I especially love that this is an LA-rooted film. the title Under the Silver Lake is such a fantastic, like, paperback pulpy title that ties into Los Angeles. But then you see it in the trailer. Neo-noirs do well in LA, and I'm really excited to see him play with that setting.
It's funny, after talking about how different this is from It Follows, as I was looking at you, I caught the back graphic out of the corner of my eye, and for a split second, I thought it was Micah Monroe leaning against the above-ground pool, but no, it's not.
He definitely has his style still.
He definitely does, and that was something that I was catching in a little bit of the trailer, is some shots in this did feel reminiscent of It Follows, and, you know, it would make sense because it's the same cinematographer on both movies. The one that caught my eye specifically, though, was that shot of him standing in the middle of the street when he punches someone. Something about that reminded me of them going down the street. And also, you know, all the tracking shots and the pushes. Very similar moves in this, but really, I mean, this looks like it's so out of left field in so many ways, in addition to just comparing it to It Follows.
There is, but there's also this interesting element that I feel ties a little bit into John Carpenter, which clearly It Follows was heavily influenced by John Carpenter. When you look at this, the idea of secret messages and the higher elite, that's very They Live. And that's exciting to me, too. It's more of a, you know, it's not a direct correlation in the way we saw with It Follows, but I see seeds there.
I like that comparison. Are you into this, Rachel?
I am. I agree with Haleigh in the sense that, like, I love it when, like, you know, a director comes out with this great debut, and especially if it's stylistically a thing and, like, metaphorically, thematically. I'm not a huge horror person, but I loved It Follows because it transcended horror to me. So then to see this, I watched the trailer the first time, and like Perri was kind of like, wasn't expecting this. Watched it a second time and went, I love this. I love that he is sort of going against expectation, but the DNA is still there. I think the color palette reminded me of It Follows. I think the sense of space, like you were talking about the shot on the street, is there. And I'm just excited to see him, you know, take some styles that he has in his back pocket, but then expand into this new territory, this neo-noir. It's funny, like that it was much more comedic than I was expecting, and I'm very curious to see Andrew Garfield kind of in this like slightly schlubby role. Brick was a great call. I felt like that kind of correlation with this character in over his head, what's real, what's not. There's a line in the trailer that I loved. It's Welcome to Purgatory. And I just felt like that encapsulated this journey that this guy's gonna go on, this mystery and what's real and what's not real. And yeah, like I'm so in to see this movie after this trailer.
The official synopsis uses the words surreal and playful, and
Yeah.
that's kind of exactly what this trailer gave me. And A24 is a pretty solid marketing department there too. They know how to sell these things, and typically, I mean, they always deliver. I can't really think of the last A24 bust I've seen, but you bring up Andrew Garfield, and his role in this really looks like something that I've never seen him do before. Sinead, do you think that this is a good way to kind of broaden his resume a little?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And also, like, based on the little we do see of him in this trailer, I mean, the trailer is actually pretty long, but what we do see of him in this trailer, he's really good. And there's like a part where he's on the phone with his mom, and she obviously asks him like how he's doing. He's like, I'm mostly fine. And he looks like he's on the verge of like a mental breakdown. But no, I think this movie looks awesome. I think he actually, like watching the trailer, you can't really picture somebody else in that role, because there is something kind of like goofy about Andrew Garfield, right? Like you feel bad for him, but like he comes across as being like put together, like you believe the words that he's saying. But also what I appreciate about this is I feel like this movie will have some twists and turns, and you can kind of see that in the trailer, that like maybe he is really crazy. And it does really intrigue you to want to figure out like what's actually happening in this movie, because there was a part where I was like, watch like none of this be real, and he's looking for something that doesn't exist whatsoever. Like I could totally see the movie going that way, and that's exciting.
That's exactly where my mind went, which makes me think that that is not what the movie is going to give me whatsoever.
But they're going to make you think that,
exactly.
for sure.
I'm obsessed with puzzles too. Like,
Yeah.
you give me a crypto quote and I'm good. So watching him do all those puzzles in the trailer, I couldn't play along right now, but it made me want to play along when the movie comes out. So I am pretty hyped about this one. And I think we got another one that we all might be looking forward to also. The first another noir thriller. The first teaser for the stylish noir thriller Terminal, starring Margot Robbie, is here. It follows a twisting tale of two assassins, played by Dexter Fletcher and Max Irons, on a dangerous mission for a mysterious employer. Their journey brings them across a number of colorful characters, and that includes a mysterious femme fatale named Annie, that's Robbie's character, who might have more to do with their mission than they think. Terminal hits theaters on May 11th, 2018. So Sinead, let's just go right into this. It's a 40-second, roughly, quick teaser trailer. What was your first impression of The Terminal?
I was like, what is this? It's 40 seconds, and like, you don't really see anything. If I didn't read the synopsis, I literally have been like, why are we covering this? If I'm being 100% honest. It's not that it's bad. It's not that it's not intriguing.
But it's Margot Robbie.
And Margot Robbie's great. Love her. Really proud of her for producing another movie. Wonderful. But honestly, if there was no synopsis attached to this movie, then I would be like, okay, cool. And I'm really surprised, actually. This movie comes out May 11th, and there's no trailer for it. I don't know if that's an awesome thing, because maybe that's their marketing for it. It's like, we're just going to push out these little clips, and we're going to hook people just like that. But it sounds cool, but the teaser didn't hook me. Like, there's a lot of cool things about it. And I like I said, if there was no synopsis, I'd have been like, all right.
Yeah, I think the first note that I wrote after I watched it was, intrigued, not sold. So that's pretty much where I stand on this.
Like, literally, that's actually the perfect way to sum it up.
I'm a big fan of Margot Robbie, and this is kind of, actually, this discussion and where it's going right now is part of the reason why I admire her so much, because ever since Wolf of Wall Street, when she became a really popular, and at that time, borderline household name before she started to add even more films to her resume, she's got the power. She's got the power to, one, do something completely different, and this feels like a very different film to me. Also, she has the power to get it in front of the eyes of wider audiences, and she can help launch somebody's career. This movie is directed by someone who has only had assistant directing credits so far. This is his feature directorial debut, and because someone like her is attached to it, she can afford him the opportunity. I'm sure he's got tons. His name is Vaughn Stein.
He's the AD. He was the AD on Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah,
which
I think
is
he was
such an interesting. That's such an interesting pull, and like, that's really cool. Like,
he's
that's
got
really,
a number
really
of
cool.
big projects. That's like an enormous one. In the Heart of the Sea, Danish Girl were some of the other well-known titles on his resume. And, I'm sure he has earned this opportunity, but someone like Robbie stepping in and saying, hey, let's give this first-time feature director a chance on something like this really excites me. Haleigh, what are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, I think for me, the big sell is Margot Robbie. She has, you alluded to, but since she came on the scene and really became known, she has used that spotlight to catapult her career in really fantastic ways, one of which was creating Lucky Chap, her production company, which was such a smart move from such a young woman. And, of course, her first film out of the gate got her an Oscar nomination, won Best Supporting Actress. I, Tonya is fantastic. That's what gets me excited, is if I, Tonya was the first thing to grab her eyes in a producer, what is this movie? Mm-hmm. Why did it grab her eye? Why did it make her want to help launch this filmmaker's career? And of course, as I mentioned, I'm a sucker for neo-noir, so I'm all about that. As for the teaser, I'm totally with you, Sinead. Like, I would not have been sold on the film from it, but the lighting looks pretty spectacular, and that definitely caught my eye, especially concerning the one still we've seen from the film of her face. That's also a very colorful, well-lit, punchy picture. So the imagery is intriguing, but yeah, it's Margot Robbie all the way that has me super fascinated.
All right, I'm going to steal one of Haleigh's questions and toss it to you, Rachel. Based on what you see in this teaser trailer, what do you think Margot Robbie saw in this story?
I think that it's probably the character. I mean, all I need to see is Margot Robbie femme fatale. I'm like, she's born to play a femme fatale. And if she's behind the scenes too, then it makes me think it's not a two-dimensional one, that there's something much more interesting and intriguing, because I don't think she would take on the character if it wasn't. She's proven herself, like Haleigh said, to be pretty savvy about this kind of stuff. But I'm good with the teaser, because I don't watch teasers to be like, oh, this is what the movie is about. I watch a teaser to be like, okay, this is the feel, the tone, the look, the lighting. There's 3 sequential shots. One is, they're all silhouettes. There's a red lit one, a yellow lit one, a blue lit one. I was like,
that's really weird.
Gorgeous.
Those clips played exactly as you said that. Perfectly timed.
Thank you. I'm done. I'm good. So like for me and her voiceover, and you have to be as mad as a hatter in this crazy underground world, and then when you read the synopsis and it's about these two assassins and there's other Simon Pegg and Mike Myers are in this movie.
Yeah.
Like I'm in, absolutely I'm in. I know we don't know much about it, but I feel like because Margot Robbie's interested in it, because these people are in it, because of the look of it, that it's going to be something interesting, if nothing else.
You make a
very
really
curious.
good point too, because when we were watching the trailer for what is it what's it called
Under the Silver Lake.
Under the Silver Lake, that one was way too long in my opinion. And towards the end, I was like, oh my god, like I don't want to hear any more funny lines because like what if I get to the movie and it's not that funny? So you do make a really good point because I always complain that if I had my way in life, I would not be in a profession where I had to watch trailers because I swear it makes me very upset sometimes because it puts an idea into my head that I don't want. Like sometimes it's the hardest thing in the entire world to not watch trailers, but I purposely am like, ugh, if I don't have to talk about a movie, I will not watch a trailer for it. Like I don't just watch them for fun. So you do bring up a really good point that this is a tease. It's supposed to just give you the vibe and it's supposed to tease you. It's not supposed to tell you. It's not a trailer, you know?
But it has to get you interested in going too. And if it didn't quite get you guys there's got to be a happy medium with teasers and trailers. And I agree. I think there are a lot of trailers out there that give away far too much.
Right. Just a few of those. All right, we're going to move on to our last story of the day now. And I think this is the one I was looking forward to discussing most because there's a lot of sides to this. So in an interview with ITV News, Steven Spielberg shared his thoughts about the rise of streaming services and specifically whether or not a movie released by a distributor like Netflix per se should be considered for the Academy Awards. He said, I don't believe that films that are just given token qualifications in a couple of theaters for less than a week should qualify for the Academy Award nominations. He also said he sees fewer filmmakers struggling to raise money or to compete at Sundance for specialty labeled distribution instead, and then more of them are going to let SVOD, streaming video on demand businesses, finance their films, maybe with the promise of a slight 1 week theatrical window to qualify for awards. But in fact, once you commit to a television format, you're a movie. So yeah, there's a lot to dig into right here. So I see you grinning. So Sinead, this one's all for you. What do you make of these comments? Do you read it as a fair thing to say, an understandable thing to say, or does it come across as a filmmaker who is just set in his ways?
Man, I hate answering questions like this because I totally can see both sides, and I feel like I always have the unpopular opinion when it comes to things like this. I get where he's coming from to a certain degree. I really do. He makes some good points. But I don't know, like I also feel like before I get into that side of it, I also feel like a movie is a movie. Like this is where movies are going. Netflix is pumping out some really great original movies. So is Amazon. So is Hulu. I watched The Big Sick again the other day, and I was like, "What the heck? This is amazing!" And like, how do you not respect like whether or not the movie made it to theaters or is streaming or whatever? Like, if there is a digital company attached to it, we should actually be celebrating that. We shouldn't be putting it down or even looking for a way to put it down. We should be celebrating that because more movies, that's the better. Like the more movies, the better, regardless of who's behind it, regardless of how long it's in theaters, regardless of if it even makes it to theaters. So for me, I'm like, how do you not just respect just the movie making industry?
Yeah,
this
is
like
a frustrating thing.
It is because
to
then
read.
On the flip side, I'm like, yeah, okay, but like a lot of the things he's saying, I'm like, oh, that is good. So it's so hard. So I don't even know if I've fully processed everything yet to pick a side here of whether I think he's completely wrong and just stuck in his ways, which on the surface, it does seem like that. It does seem like, dude, it's 2018. Clearly your idea of movies is not real. Like it's gone. Like it's literally gone. But then also, I just feel like he had good points leading up to one underlying thing that is not right, if that makes sense. Like his his points to support his claim were right.
Yeah.
What he's actually saying seems very outdated and very old-fashioned.
I think I know where you're coming from. It's a really frustrating thing to think about because there's no simple solution or easy answer to any of this. So when I first read this quote, my mind immediately went to, oh, like you're being a curmudgeon. Why aren't you embracing Netflix and Amazon and all these things that I love that give me movies right now at home?
Right.
But then when you actually listen to the interview and you start to read some of the other quotes, I see why it's problematic. And the one that really stuck out to me was at one point he said something along the lines of, right now we've got studios who'd rather just make branded tentpole guaranteed box office hits than take a chance on a smaller film. This is the problem that we're going to wind up with if we keep saying, okay, they don't really count, let them do their own thing, and we separate everything, because if studios aren't taking a chance on the little guy, we're going to wind up in a position where the only thing you could see on the big screen in a theater is a superhero movie, a Star Wars movie, or anything else that is a guaranteed franchise. That is a very, very sad reality to me. But on the flip side of it, I look at a movie like Mudbound. Why wouldn't Mudbound be nominated for an Oscar just because it's a Netflix movie and just because it got a super limited theatrical release? That's also not fair. So I think it's a matter of not just the Academy rules, not just filmmakers who have been around for a really long time, and not just new filmmakers wanting to embrace streaming platforms. Everyone needs to come to some sort of communal conclusion that will enhance the industry. Really, I mean, what it comes down to is I just want everybody to be happy and play nice. That's pretty much what I'm getting at right here. But there's certain rules that are set, and I do get the sense that even though I don't know the answer to it, if you tweak rules, it's a way to get everybody to at least take a step closer to embracing everything. Where are we going with this, Haleigh?
I'll say this. So I think it's important to remember that Steven Spielberg is a formalist filmmaker. He is an audience-centric filmmaker. He frames every shot with specificity. He is all about the audience experience. The extension of that is then projection, which is a battle that directors lost a long time ago. Projection has gone south in many ways over the last decade and a half. This streaming at home, this is all an extension of the projection issue. It's how the audience receives the film. And I get his point in that you won't necessarily shoot a film the same way for a small screen that you would for a big screen. This came up with Annihilation. Alex Garland said that in a lot of his interviews after the film went to Netflix internationally. He had said, I have no problem with Netflix as a platform. However, I did not make my movie for Netflix. And that, I think, is part of the problem, is what are you making your movie for? What is the best experience for your audience? That said, we live in a different time now. The reality is the projection battle was lost. People watch things on their phone. That's just the way it is. We have to accommodate that. I do think there's maybe a reason why some of the biggest, most impressive filmmakers like Spielberg and Christopher Nolan have spoken out against this. It may not be the best way to receive a film, but it is the way we're receiving our films. So what has to happen is a sort of industry-wide analysis of how do we perceive these new films in light of awards culture. That, I don't think, is a conversation we've fully had yet. It's sort of been blindly, like, everything's changing so fast. Netflix is renovating or innovating so quickly that everyone's just sort of trying to keep up. Do I think Mudbound is a TV movie? No. Do I think Gerald's Game, which I was fortunate enough to see in a theater and was one of the most just stomach-rending, horrifying. I saw this at Fantastic Fest where everyone's like a hardened genre nut and everybody was screaming and covering their eyes. I wish we could have seen that in theaters, across the country. But it doesn't undermine the value of the film by nature of where it's shown.
Yeah, I watched that on my iPad, and I still got a very similar effect from it. But hearing you describe the theatrical experience with a full crowd, I wouldn't have minded that approach too. So Haleigh brings up intention when you're making a movie, whether you make it for the big screen or a small screen. Are we in a climate right now where that should even matter, or is it fair for it to matter? Because what if there is some independent, super low budget, maybe a first-time feature filmmaker out there who can only get their movie made if it's financed and released on a streaming platform?
Yeah, I think that where Steven Spielberg is coming is this. He's coming from a place of trying to preserve the theater-going experience, and that is as we've all said, it is vastly changing. Theater goer numbers are down, home theater numbers are up. Like, people have huge screens at home. So, like, the line's blurry. The divide between movies and television is, not what it was when he was making movies in his heyday. So I definitely get where he's coming from, but it's not this or that. It's not black or white. And that, like, I think, even though it's sort of the optimistic view, but Perri was right. Like, can't we all, like, gather around a table, like old school, new school, and try to, come together? Because intention is part of it, but getting your art out there is part of it. And it's all under the same umbrella. They're all filmmakers, they're all storytellers, and we want them all to get their stuff out there. And as consumers, we want to be able to take it in whatever way we can afford, have time for, or anything like that. Like, that is a fact of the way we do things in the entertainment industry now. So the awards culture is like almost an entirely separate conversation, and I don't know what all the answers are with that. Part of me was wondering, if these Amazon and Hulu and Netflix films want to be, considered for Oscars, maybe change the eligibility rules. Like, you have to be in more than 2 theaters across the nation for a week. You have to be in 250 for a month or something like that. And then filmmakers will have that in mind when they're intending to make their movies and how they make them. So there are a lot of conversations to be had. I feel for Spielberg because I feel for the old school film going experience. I still adore that. We all do, but we're all capable of experiencing it on a regular basis. Not everybody is, and it's, you have to keep those people in mind too.
It's a challenging thing to have to rationalize, because we just brought up Gerald's Game and Annihilation, and being in LA, we're lucky enough to get to see some of those things on the big screen. Where were you going to go?
I was just going to say, I also think it's an interesting matter of how we perceive which art is worthy. Like, why is TV movie a diminutive?
Right.
When TV has been so excellent for so long now, why do we still think about things that way?
That divide is no longer a divide.
Right.
Game of Thrones, I've seen on the big screen. That is as cinematic as any MCU movie out there. And
Absolutely.
It's television. So it's blurry now, and we have to come together on it.
It goes back to what Sinead was saying before, where it's like part of his justification for this statement was on point and made a whole lot of sense. And then he says something like, Netflix movies deserve an Emmy, but not an Oscar. And you're like, wait, that doesn't quite make sense.
I don't understand how the awards was part of his conversation. Like, how was that the main thing he was getting at? Because that's the one thing I can absolutely say I don't agree with. You know what I'm saying? But everything else he was saying to get there, I could hear what he was getting at. But the one thing, if his whole thing was to say that it's a TV movie, so it should get an Emmy because it was produced or made with the intention of it being on TV, like,
And
I don't.
thus being less.
Yeah,
like
and
that's sort of the tone.
That's
there.
where that's where it messes up for me. Like, that's where it took a turn, and I'm like, oh, well, you just lost me, because everything else I can totally get on board with.
I wonder if it just blurs the line now, not necessarily just for Academy Awards with theatrical versus streaming, but then taking the Emmys into account and the idea of a TV movie. What if they introduce like a TV movie category? But that also seems unfair, because that's like when we ask the question all the time, in order to get more wide releases in the Best Picture category, why don't we have a Best Drama, a Best Horror, a Best Sci-Fi? That way they can all, pick one and then they compete together. But I don't know, it waters down the value of the award to me, and I don't think that the answer to this is just honoring streaming movies as its own thing, but instead putting it right in there with all the theatrical releases, because really, a lot of the streaming movies that I'm seeing lately are getting better and better, and like Mudbound, there are some that and Okja, there are some that should be serious contenders right alongside the others.
There's a lot of theatrical movies that are total crap, if we're being honest. And there are a lot of TV
Never
movies.
seen them.
But there's a lot of TV movies that are great. I mean, I have a family with very different tastes. I've seen plenty of awful theatrical movies. And I'll tell you right now, there are so many times where I watched Dunkirk for the first time on my TV, and I was like, why did I do that? But I still loved it. Like, I still enjoyed the heck out of it. But that's like the worst comparison he can make, because there are plenty of theatrical movies that are garbage, and there are plenty of streaming movies that are incredible. So there's just no way to balance it that way. It doesn't make any sense.
So clearly Clearly, we do not have the answer to these questions, but it is a topic well worth discussing right now. So you know what? Hit that comment section below. Share your thoughts on Spielberg's quotes. And I also want to give you the heads up, at the very end of the show, we are going to take some of your live Twitter questions. So start sending them in to the Collider Video Twitter account. We're going to pick out some good ones. And I got a whole bunch of plugs for you today. You got a lot of stuff to watch. And you know what? Speaking of Spielberg, we have our top 10 Steven Spielberg movie series up and running right now. We had our introduction video. We had the first part of our honorable mentions up yesterday, and today, you know what, you're getting 2 more honorable mentions before we roll into the official top 10 next week. I'm so proud of the team on that one. Everything is just real. It's so exciting to talk about a filmmaker you love with folks that you love too, and it's really interesting to see what people wind up fighting for their number one. It might surprise you. We also have an all-new Jedi Council that dropped yesterday. And then, of course, there's our new show, Caption This. A new episode came out yesterday. And also, please go on over to the Collider Video Instagram account, follow it, and keep an eye out for images that go with the Caption This show. Because if you submit a good caption, maybe Copster and Cody will read it. And they'll act super silly about it. It's really entertaining. We also have a brand new Schmodown dropping later today. This match is Ethan Irwin going against Yolanda Machado. I hope I pronounced that right, Yolanda. I love you. Check that match out when it drops later this afternoon. And now we have some Twitter questions. So for my first one here, I'm going to go with one from Big C, because he writes, this one is for you, Perri Nemiroff. If you could make or change one of the Jurassic Park films, which one would it be? Oh, if you could remake or change one of the Jurassic Park films, which one would it be, and what would you change? So part of the reason why I picked this one is also because on Collider.com, Adam Chitwood just posted a really interesting article about the whole Jurassic Park franchise. So I would suggest checking that out because this question applies very, very well. So jumping into it, though, I think even though Jurassic Park 3 is clearly the weak link of the bunch, if I could remake any of them, I think I would go with Jurassic World. And it's not because I didn't like Jurassic World. It's just because when I went into Jurassic World, and you know, expectations sometimes aren't fair, and sometimes a movie can surprise you in a good way, but with Jurassic World, what I wanted more than anything was a movie that felt like the original and basically brought John Hammond's vision to life. And instead, what I got was kind of a, you know, an action film with just completely washed over with digital effects that really didn't feel like I could reach out and touch the dinosaurs. Like this park was a living, breathing thing that actually existed. And if I could change anything, it would be a Jurassic World movie that looked and felt more like the original that I know and love. Haleigh, what would you go with on this one?
I think you kind of just nailed it right there. I absolutely would also go with Jurassic World, and same, I don't hate that movie. I enjoyed it, but it is not the return to Jurassic Park that I was hoping for in my heart, which is so interesting because you know that Trevorrow is like a huge Spielberg lover, and he clearly built up the world that he had in his heart. I don't see it that way, and I would love to return to some of the more basics that made Jurassic Park so functional in the first place, as opposed to this sort of extensive world building. I don't really think that's ever what it was about. Genetically trained dinosaurs and things like that weren't why we fell in love with it.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. Sinead, you going with Jurassic World as well?
Yeah, and I wish that they would have seen it that way too, because I feel like if they would have marketed from that perspective of being like, this is not a continuation of the world you've come to know and love. This is like a reboot, a modern reboot. Then I would have been like, all right, fine. I respect that because you know what you are. But it just kind of seemed like they didn't know what they were. And it's not by any means a terrible movie. But I mean, when it comes down to it, I feel like it did fall short. So yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I know plenty of people that, obviously I'm really young, so I know plenty of people that didn't get into Jurassic Park the first time around, and that can kind of respect this one. So I don't know, it's tough because it's hard because like when you know and love a movie that's so different from when it comes back onto your screen years and years later, there's going to be a natural human instinct to compare it to that, like absolutely. But if you didn't resonate with that first time around, then you can see this from a different perspective. I don't think any of us know what that is, but I've I mean, like I said, I have a 16-year-old brother who's seeing all these things for the first time. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, you should watch the original. And he's like, the original looks old. And I'm like, oh, my God. You know what I'm saying? But it's true. Like, and I get
The original
that.
doesn't look old.
It looks
though.
amazing.
I know. I'm like, it holds up
was
to
so
date.
hard
That's
for me
why
not to
it's
just
so
jump in and say
good.
that.
I know, but it's true. But like, you know what I'm saying? But that's why it's tough to put it in perspective when you do have such a connection with something that's already years past, because I do believe that there's a lot of people that do really love Jurassic World too.
All right, so 3 Jurassic Worlds right now, Rachel. Are you switching it up or going with the same one?
I might banish any goodwill I have accumulated in this by saying my choice. I completely agree with you all in Jurassic World, but I am actually going to say that The Lost World is possibly my least favorite in the franchise. I actually kind of like the third one. I know, weird. The second one, it's muddled to me. It's weirdly different from the book. I know the first one is too, but in ways that I didn't understand the choices. And I'm sorry, I just laugh, and not in a good way, when I see a dinosaur running through San Diego. Like, it doesn't, it took me out. Like, there was just something off about that movie to me, and I would love for somebody to go back to the source material and really kind of dig into that and make a little bit more of an interesting version of The Lost World. But that's just me.
No, that's a fair point. Lost World is my second favorite Jurassic movie, but there is so much in that book that is not on screen.
Yeah.
If they ever did remake that, I wouldn't mind seeing an adaptation that's closer to the source material.
Glad you're with me.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys. You know what? I want to answer more Twitter questions, but when you got to go, you got to go. Movie Talk is over today. Sinead, Haleigh, Rachel, thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you
Thank
to
you.
all the guys in the back. We have Thad and Adam and Dorian. Thank you out there to everybody who's watching the show right now. It's always a ton of fun to talk movies with you guys every single morning. So that is it for Movie Talk today, but we will be back bright and early Monday morning.
Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.